Joe Profaci was an Italian-born New York City Cosa Nostra boss who was the founder of what became the Colombo crime family, one of the 5 major organized crime families in New York City. By the 1930s, he was controlling numbers, prostitution, loan sharking, and narcotics trafficking in Brooklyn, and was known for his tight control over his crime family and his wealth, which was estimated to be in the millions of dollars. In the early 1960s, Profaci was involved in a power struggle with rival gangster Joe Gallo, which resulted in a violent gang war known as the Gallo-Profaci conflict. He died in 1962, before the conflict was fully resolved. Despite his criminal activities, Profaci was considered a well-respected figure within the mafia and was known for his charitable endeavors. Joe Profaci was born Giuseppe Profaci in Villabate, in the province of Palermo, Sicily, on October 2, 1897. His son Frank eventually joined the Profaci crime family while his other son John followed legitimate pursuits. He began indulging in petty crimes during his childhood, and in his teenage years, he got involved with the Sicilian Mafia. In 1920, Profaci spent 1 year in prison in Palermo. He immigrated to the United States after being released from prison in 1921, arriving in New York City on September 4, 1921. Profaci moved to Chicago and opened a grocery store and bakery. However, the venture was a failure, and he relocated to New York in 1925, where he entered the olive oil import business. Profaci became a citizen of the United States on September 27, 1927. He then became involved with local gangs at some point after moving to Brooklyn. Despite becoming the largest olive oil dealer in his city, his ambitions were limitless. At the pinnacle of his olive oil success, he began to look for new business opportunities, legal or otherwise. Profaci decided to form his own gang in 1927 after gaining enough knowledge of the inner workings of the New York Mafia. His friendship with Mafia boss Vincent Mungano played a role in the many factors that led to this decision. Profaci attended a mob meeting at the Statler Hotel in Cleveland, Ohio on December 5, 1928. The meeting's agenda included resolving assassination-related conflicts and a vote on recognizing the Profaci crime family in Brooklyn. Given Profaci's lack of experience in organized crime, it's unclear why New York gangs delegated power to him in Brooklyn. Some speculated that Profaci was appointed because of his family's status in Sicily, where they may have been members of the Villabate Mafia. Or, Profaci could have also benefited from contacts made through his olive oil business. Although Cleveland police raided the meeting and expelled the mobsters, Profaci's business was completed. By 1930, Profaci was in charge of Brooklyn's numbers, prostitution, loan sharking, and narcotics trafficking. The Castellammarese War erupted in New York City in 1930. According to some sources, Profaci remained neutral, while others claim he was firmly aligned with Castellammarese boss Salvatore Maranzano. When the war ended in 1931, top mobster Charles Lucky Luciano reorganized the gangs in New York into 5 organized crime families. Profaci was now recognized as the boss of the Profaci crime family, with Maiaco as underboss and Joe Profaci's brother, Salvatore Profaci, as consigliere. Profaci was appointed to the governing board of the National Crime Syndicate, also known as the Commission, by Luciano. Profaci's closest board ally was Joseph Bonanno, with whom he would work for the next 30 years. Profaci also had ties to the Buffalo crime family's boss, Stefano Magaddino. Profaci amassed the majority of his fortune through traditional illegal activities such as protection rackets and extortion. However, to protect himself from federal tax evasion charges, Profaci still maintained his original olive oil business, known as Mamma Mia Importing Company, leading to his nickname, the Olive Oil King. His business thrived as the demand for olive oil increased following World War II. Profaci also owned 20 other businesses in New York that employed hundreds of people. Profaci was a devout Catholic who contributed generously to Catholic charities. As a Knights of Columbus member, he would invite priests to his estate to celebrate Mass. Once, in May 1952, a thief stole valuable jeweled crowns from the Regina Pacis votive shrine in Brooklyn. Profaci dispatched his men to recover the crowns and allegedly assassinate the thief. However, stories about the thief being strangled with a rosary has no foundation. In 1949, the Vatican received a petition from a group of New York Catholics requesting that Profaci be knighted. However, after the Brooklyn district attorney objected to the move, the Vatican denied the petition. In 1953, the U.S. Internal Revenue Service sued Profaci for over $1.5 million in unpaid income taxes. However, these would remain unpaid when Profaci would die 9 years later. The U.S. Department of Justice moved to revoke Profaci's citizenship in 1954. According to the government, when he arrived in the United States in 1921, he lied to immigration officials about having no arrest record in Italy. In 1960, a United States Court of Appeals overturned Profaci's deportation order, effectively ending the legal action. A phone conversation between Profaci and Antonio Catone, a Sicilian mafioso, about exporting Sicilian oranges to the United States was recorded in 1956 by law enforcement. One of those orange crates was intercepted by U.S. Customs agents in New York in 1959. The crate held 90 wax oranges, totaling 110 pounds of pure heroin. Smugglers in Sicily had filled the hollow oranges with heroin until they weighed the same as real oranges before packing them in the crate. Profaci, however, was never prosecuted for this crime. Profaci attended the Appalachian Conference, a national mob meeting, in 1957 at mobster Joseph Barber's farm in Appalachian, New York. During the conference, New York State troopers surrounded and raided the farm. He was one of more than 60 mobsters apprehended that day. Profaci and 21 others were convicted of conspiracy on January 13, 1960, and he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. However, on November 28, 1960, the verdicts were overturned by a United States Court of Appeals. Many of Profaci's men thought he was miserly and mean with money, in contrast to his generosity to his family and the church. One factor in their animosity was his demand that each member of the family pay him a $25 tithe each month, which was an old Sicilian gang tradition. It was intended to provide support for the families of organized crime figures who were imprisoned and amounted to about $50,000 per month. However, Profaci kept the majority of this cash. Furthermore, he did not tolerate any opposition to his policies, and those who voiced their displeasure were killed. On February 27, 1961, the Gallos, led by Joe Gallo, kidnapped 4 of Profaci's top men. Profaci eluded capture and took flight for safety to Florida. Larry and Albert Gallo sent Joe Gallo to California while they were holding the hostages to demand a more advantageous financial plan. Before negotiations, Gallo intended to kill one hostage and demand $100,000, but his brother Larry intervened. After a few weeks of negotiations, Profaci's consigliere Charles Locicero reached a peaceful resolution with the Gallos and secured the release of all the hostages. Profaci, however, had no plans to abide by this truce. On August 20, 1961, Profaci gave the order to have Larry Gallo and Joseph Gioielli killed. Gioielli was allegedly invited to go fishing before being killed by gunmen. Carmine Persico and Salvatore D'Ambrosio tried to strangle Larry Gallo in the Sahara Club in East Flatbush, but a police officer intervened. Profaci's health was deteriorating by 1962. Tommy Lucchese, head of the Lucchese crime family, and Carlo Gambino attempted to persuade Profaci to resign in order to put an end to the gang war. But Profaci had a sneaking suspicion that the two bosses wanted to take over his family and were secretly working with the Gallo brothers. Profaci adamantly refused to step down and threatened to start a larger gang war if anyone attempted to do so. Subsequently, Lucchese and Gambino gave up and abandoned their pursuits. On June 6, 1962, Profaci died of liver cancer in Southside Hospital in Bay Shore, New York, before the conflict was fully resolved. Joseph Magliacco succeeded him as head of the family, but in late 1963, the Mafia Commission forced Magliacco out of office and installed Joseph Colombo as family boss. From this point on, the Profaci crime family became the Colombo crime family.